I never imagined that at 62 years old, I would be driving at 11 o'clock at night through streets I didn't recognize, my hands shaking on the steering wheel, and my heart pounding so loud it felt like it wanted to escape my chest. My name is Simone Vance, and tonight, my whole life, 40 years of marriage, was about to crumble. It all began just 3 hours earlier. I was passing the tall glass building where my husband, Elijah Vance, had worked for 25 years. But that night, the lights were off. The parking lot was empty, and a notice on the door said the offices were closed for renovation starting at 6 p.m. For a second, I thought I had the wrong building. But no, there it was. The company's big silver logo shining in the dark. His company. I dialed his number. My fingers were trembling. "How's the project going, my love?" I asked, trying to sound calm, trying to sound like the caring wife I had been for 4 decades. His answer came fast, too smooth. "Super busy here, Simone. Can't talk right now. Tokyo project's keeping us all up. Don't wait up for me." And then I heard it. Soft laughter, a woman's moan, that quiet sound of intimacy that I knew too well. My whole body went cold. My stomach twisted, but my mind suddenly became clear, painfully clear. I opened the family GPS app, the one I had insisted on installing last year when Elijah had that small car accident. And there it was. His car. His silver Mercedes. Parked not near his office, not even in the city center, but in a quiet, expensive neighborhood I had never been to. Every mile I drove felt like I was peeling off layers of my own skin. The houses were beautiful, too beautiful. Big porches, flowers, soft yellow lights glowing through curtains. The kind of place where happy families lived. And then I saw it. Elijah's Mercedes. Parked in front of a blue two-story house with a white porch swing and hydrangeas in bloom. A warm light glowed in an upstairs window. I parked 3 houses down. My heart thudded. My palms were wet. A woman appeared in that window. Mid-40s, not young, but graceful. Her hair in a messy bun. She was wearing a blue silk robe, the exact same one Elijah had given me for our last anniversary. Mine was wine red. Hers was blue. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Elijah. "Leaving the office now, love. Don't wait up. Grab dinner without me." My lips curled into a bitter smile. He was lying, and I was staring right at the truth. A few seconds later, a boy appeared beside that woman. Maybe 10 years old. Dark, wavy hair. The same eyes. The same curious tilt of the head Elijah always had. My heart stopped. My throat burned. That boy, he had Elijah's face. I sat there for hours, numb, until the sun came up. When I finally got home, Elijah was already there, walking through the front door with a box of donuts, Boston creams. My favorite. "Morning, my love," he said, kissing me on the cheek like everything was fine. "I brought your favorites. Long night, you know how international projects are." His voice was so casual, so normal, and I thought, if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I would have believed every single word. I smiled, just like always. "How thoughtful," I said softly. "Why don't you shower while I make coffee?" When the water started running, I opened his briefcase. Inside, nothing suspicious. Just papers, pens, a tablet. But there was something new. A phone I'd never seen before, hidden deep inside a small compartment. The screen was on. Several missed calls from home. And one message, "Daddy, don't forget my soccer game Saturday. Mommy says you promised to come. Love, Jalen." My breath caught. Another child. Another woman called Mommy. I sat there holding that phone, realizing that my 40 years of marriage were built on lies. The late nights, the business trips, the calls he took in the yard away from me. It all fit now. Perfectly. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just froze. When Elijah came out of the shower, humming that same tune he always whistled when he was in a good mood, I smiled at him. I poured his coffee. I placed the donuts on the table. He looked at me, concerned. You look pale, Simone. Are you okay? Yes, I said quietly. Just tired. For 3 days, I pretended everything was normal. I smiled. I cooked. I laughed at his jokes. I even kissed him goodnight. Because I had a plan forming. A quiet, dangerous plan. On the third day, I put on jeans and a hoodie, hid my hair under a cap, and drove back to that blue house. The same one from that night. It was 2 in the afternoon. Elijah was supposedly at the office. I knew better. I parked closer this time. A few minutes later, the woman came out. She was holding a baby in a front carrier. A tiny baby, maybe 6 months old. My head spun. Another child. Another life. I followed her, keeping my distance. She stopped at a small coffee shop with hanging plants and soft music. She met 2 other women, both with babies. They laughed, chatted about sleepless nights and diaper brands. Then one of them said something that made my blood run cold. Candace, you're so lucky. Marcus is such a hands-on dad. Candace. That was her name. And Marcus, my Elijah's fake name. Candace smiled. Yes, though his work keeps him busy. He travels for 3 or 4 days sometimes, but he always makes up for it when he's home. 3 or 4 days. The same number of days Elijah always said he was traveling for business. It all connected. Every lie, every excuse. And then another woman asked, how's Jalen handling the new baby? Jealous at first, Candace said with a smile. But Marcus bought him a new baseball glove. Now they spend Saturdays together while I rest. Saturdays? The same Saturdays Elijah said he was at seminars. I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up and shout his name right there. But I didn't. I stayed calm. I took a deep breath because I wanted him to fall hard and publicly. Then Candace took out her phone to show photos. I caught a glimpse as I walked past her table. There he was. Elijah, my husband, smiling at the beach, carrying the boy on his shoulders, with Candace beside him, pregnant, her belly round and glowing. I stumbled out of that cafe like a ghost. My legs were shaking. My chest hurt. On my way back to the car, I heard a familiar voice. That's it, champ. Kick harder. It was Elijah. He was at the park, coaching a little soccer team. Jalen ran to him laughing. Elijah lifted him in the air, his face full of joy, a father's joy. And I stood there, watching the man I thought I knew. The man who had held my hand through childbirth. The man who had whispered love into my ear for 40 years. And yet, here he was, living another life with another family. I didn't move for 20 minutes. I just watched him. And when he called me later, pretending he was leaving a meeting, I smiled into the phone and said, that would be perfect, darling. Bring some wine. That night, he slept beside me like nothing had happened. His breathing was steady, peaceful, like a man without guilt. I went into the bathroom, looked at my reflection, and realized something painful. I didn't know the woman in the mirror anymore. The girl who once dreamed of being a painter was gone. She had turned into Simone, the perfect wife, the patient wife, the blind wife. But that night, in front of that mirror, I made a silent promise. This time, I wouldn't cry. This time, I wouldn't beg. This time, I would fight back with the truth. And the truth, my dear listeners, was darker than I ever imagined. Because when I opened his briefcase again the next morning, I found something that would change everything forever. It wasn't the phone this time. It wasn't a message. It was a file. A small folder, hidden behind papers in a company notebook. Inside were receipts, documents, and names I didn't recognize. One of them was for a private school. The name written on the invoice made my knees go weak. Jalen Stanton. That wasn't my last name. That was his other life's name. My husband, Elijah Vance, had another name, Marcus Stanton. My head started spinning. My husband was living a double life, not an affair, not a fling, a second identity, a second family, I sat down on the kitchen floor, holding those papers like proof of a murder. The man I had loved for 40 years didn't exist. Later that day, I heard his voice calling from the living room. "Simone, have you seen my blue folder?" My hands froze. My heart almost stopped. I slipped the folder back into his briefcase just seconds before he walked in. He smiled at me, kissed my forehead, and said, "Thanks, love. I thought I left it in the office." His calmness, his confidence, it terrified me. He had no idea how close he was to being exposed. That night, I waited until he fell asleep. Then I picked up his phone. Not the new one, his regular one. I opened his email. Thousands of messages. But there was one that caught my eye. Flight itinerary, San Diego conference. The date? 11 years ago. And that was the same week Jalen, the little boy, was born. I didn't sleep at all that night. I sat by the window, staring at the stars, asking myself one question: how long had I been living inside a lie? The next morning, I made a decision. I needed proof. I needed answers. I couldn't keep guessing, so I hired someone, a private investigator. His name was Agent Sterling, a calm man with sad eyes who had probably seen too many broken hearts. "I need to know everything," I told him. "How long he's been doing this. How deep it goes." He looked at me for a moment and asked softly, "Are you sure you want the truth?" I nodded. "Yes. I've lived in lies long enough." He took the job. And for a week, I went through the motions of life. I smiled when Elijah came home. I cooked dinner. I asked him about his work. I listened to his stories, but every word from him sounded like poison now. A week later, Sterling called. "Mrs. Vance, I think it's time we meet." He came to my house when Elijah was on a business trip. He placed a thick folder on the dining table, the same table where we had celebrated birthdays, Christmas, anniversaries. "Everything you asked for," he said gently. "But I must warn you, it's worse than most cases I've handled." I opened it. The first page nearly took my breath away. A marriage certificate. Marcus Stanton and Candace Stanton. Married 12 years ago. I felt my heart stop. He wasn't just cheating. He was married. To another woman, while still married to me. My hands shook as I turned the pages. Photos of their wedding. A small ceremony on a beach. Him wearing a white shirt. Candace in a simple dress. He looked happy. Too happy. There were also 2 birth certificates. Jalen Stanton, 11 years old. Sky Stanton, 7 months old. Both listed Marcus Stanton as the father. My voice came out as a whisper. "This is bigamy. It's illegal." Sterling nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Your husband forged documents to create a second identity. He's been maintaining both lives for over a decade." I couldn't breathe. My entire world felt like it had cracked open. 2 families. 2 homes. 2 lives. And he had been walking between them like it was nothing. Sterling continued, "There's something else. The other woman, Candace, she doesn't know about you." My head snapped up. "What do you mean?" "She thinks her husband is a widower. He told her his first wife, Simone, died in a car accident 15 years ago. Dead. He told her I was dead." I dropped my face into my hands. My body started shaking. He had killed me in his story. He erased me completely. Sterling looked at me with pity. "Your husband's a professional at this. He's been using your money, too." I frowned. "My money?" He nodded. "Your mother's inheritance. The funds she left for you. He's been transferring them into accounts under Marcus Stanton's name. That's how he bought the other house, the condo, even a cabin in the Smoky Mountains." I whispered, "He used my mother's money to build his fake family." Sterling didn't speak. He just nodded slowly. When he left, I sat alone for hours. The house was silent, but my mind was screaming. I realized I couldn't just expose him with tears. I had to destroy him with strategy. The next morning, I called my son. "Jamal," I said, "I need your help." And I need you to stay calm. He's a corporate lawyer, sharp and loyal. When I showed him the evidence, his face turned pale. Then it hardened. I'll destroy him, he said, his voice like steel. Bigamy, fraud, tax evasion, we'll bury him legally. No, I said. I don't want him in prison. I want him alive, watching everything he loves fall apart. We sat for hours, planning. We needed Amar too, my daughter, brilliant in public relations. When I told her, she cried, screamed, and then grew silent. Okay, she said, wiping her tears. If he lived 2 lives in secret, we'll make sure everyone in both worlds knows who he really is. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the quiet wife anymore. I was the storm. We contacted Elijah's sister, Patricia. She was shocked, heartbroken. I always felt something was wrong, she admitted. But I never imagined this. She helped us find documents in their mother's safe deposit box, real wills, hidden papers, bank keys. Piece by piece, the truth came together. Elijah wasn't just cheating. He was stealing, forging, living 2 lives funded by lies. For the next few weeks, I played my role perfectly. I smiled at him every morning. I kissed him goodnight. I told him I loved him. And all the while, I was planning his fall. He had no idea. He thought his lies were unbreakable. He thought I was still the same Simone, soft, quiet, trusting. But he was wrong. That Simone was gone. The woman sitting across from him at the breakfast table now was a stranger who was about to end his empire of deceit. One evening, while we were having dinner, Elijah looked up from his plate. You know, I've been thinking about retirement, he said. Maybe we can travel, see the world. He smiled at me, the same smile he gave Candace, I was sure. That sounds wonderful, I replied. Maybe Italy, or Greece, somewhere with art. He nodded happily. Yes, you've always loved art. I smiled back, but inside I was counting the days. The next 6 weeks were performance art. I became his dream wife again. I cooked his favorite meals, made him laugh, even surprised him with romantic gestures. He was so pleased, so relaxed. And that was exactly what I wanted. Meanwhile, Jamal worked quietly behind the scenes. He traced every hidden account, every offshore transfer, every fake signature. Amar prepared the media connections. And Patricia found the original will, proving Elijah had forged his father's inheritance. Every piece of the puzzle was ready. All that was left was the perfect moment to strike. And that moment came, our 40th wedding anniversary. Elijah had planned a grand dinner, 50 guests, fancy restaurant, live music, champagne, the works. He wanted the world to see him as the perfect husband, and that's exactly what I needed. On the night of the celebration, I wore a deep red dress, elegant but bold. My hair was in a perfect updo, my smile soft but sharp. People kept saying how radiant I looked. They had no idea I was preparing for war. Elijah looked handsome as ever, tailored suit, silver hair shining under the chandeliers. He leaned close and whispered, "You take my breath away, Simone." I smiled sweetly. Not for long. As dinner began, guests laughed and drank champagne. The music played softly in the background. Elijah raised his glass. To my beautiful wife, Simone. 40 years of love, loyalty, and happiness. The room clapped. People sighed. And I just stared at him, at the man who had built his life on lies. Then he took out a small blue velvet box. "Simone," he said proudly, "will you renew our vows?" The room gasped. Cameras flashed. Guests applauded. I stood up, smiled, and let him slip the ring on my finger. But this time, I wasn't saying yes to him. I was saying yes to the truth. Before I give my answer, I said, taking the microphone, I have something special to share. Elijah smiled proudly, thinking it was a tribute. But it wasn't. I pulled out my phone. One click, and the room went silent. Elijah's voice echoed through the speakers, "Candace, my love. Don't worry. Simone believes every word I say. It's almost pathetic how easy it is. Gasps filled the room. Elijah's face went pale. I looked around at our friends, our family. Their eyes were wide, their faces frozen in shock. I wasn't done. The projector flickered on. Photo after photo filled the screen. Elijah's wedding with Candace, family pictures, his children, their house, his fake name. 40 years, I said, my voice calm but strong. 40 years of lies. 40 years of living with a man who had another wife, another family, another life. The room erupted in whispers. Someone screamed. Someone cried. Elijah tried to grab my arm. Simone, stop. But Jamal stood up. Don't touch my mother. Amara took the microphone and said, for everyone here, this is not a show. This is justice. Elijah's empire of lies had just fallen, live, in front of everyone who mattered. And yet, that wasn't the end. Not even close. Because the next morning, the story of Elijah Vance, the bigamous businessman, would explode across every headline in the country. His name was everywhere. Television, newspapers, radio. Prominent executive living double life. Businessman accused of bigamy, fraud, and deceit. His photos filled the screens, one of him with me, smiling like a perfect husband, and another of him with Candace and their children, pretending to be a loving father. I watched it all from my hotel room window, sipping black coffee, the city below buzzing with the scandal. My red dress from the night before still hung on the chair. It looked like a symbol now, a battle dress. The phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters, old friends, people from the company, even distant relatives. Everyone wanted a statement, but I didn't say a word. Not yet. At 9 a.m., my daughter Amara called. Her voice was calm, firm, and steady, the voice of a woman who had learned control from her mother. Mom, the story broke. It's everywhere. I know, I said quietly. I can see it. She exhaled. Are you okay? I smiled sadly. I don't know, but I'm breathing. An hour later, my son Jamal arrived at the hotel. He was holding his laptop and 3 files. It's done, he said. The divorce papers are filed. The accounts are frozen. He signed everything in front of witnesses last night. I nodded. Good. Then he added, the IRS has already opened an investigation. It's only a matter of time before they move in. My son wasn't just my child anymore. He was my protector. My soldier. The boy I raised had turned into the man who stood between me and my pain. By 11, Amara came with her team, 3 sharp young women with tablets and determination. They set up a mini office right there in the suite. The embargo ends in 2 hours, Amara said, typing fast. At 1 o'clock, the first major TV network will release the exclusive interview. By 2, the newspapers will follow. The hashtag's already trending. What hashtag? I asked. She smiled slightly. Hashtag the Diana's double life of Vance. It was surreal. My pain had turned into a headline. My humiliation had become national news. At noon, Elijah's company released a statement. Effective immediately, Mr. Elijah Vance has been suspended pending investigation into serious ethical violations. His partner, Devin Harris, spoke live to the press. We are shocked and deeply disappointed. If the allegations are true, Elijah betrayed not only his family, but the company's integrity. By 2 o'clock, the storm was unstoppable. Every network, every social media platform, every whisper in Atlanta carried his name. But through all the chaos, I felt calm. I wasn't broken. I wasn't the weak wife anymore. I was the woman who had survived the truth and used it to find her strength. Then the phone rang again. The hotel operator said softly, Mrs. Vance, there's someone downstairs asking to see you. Her name is Candace. Candace, the other wife. My hands froze around the cup. For a moment, I couldn't move. Then I whispered, send her up. When the door opened, Candace stood there holding her purse like it was her last anchor. Her eyes were red, her face pale. And in that moment, I didn't see my husband's mistress. I saw another woman like me, a woman who had been lied to. "Is it true?" she asked in a trembling voice. "Are you Simone?" "Yes," I said softly. "I'm Simone Vance, his first and only legal wife." Tears filled her eyes. "He told me you died 15 years ago in a car accident. I even lit candles for you once." Her voice broke on the word died. I swallowed hard. "I know. He built his world on that lie." She sat down slowly, her fingers shaking. "He told me he had lost everything, that I was his second chance at life. That's how he made me love him. I wanted to hate her, but I couldn't. She was a victim too." "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "My children, they adore him. How do I tell them their father isn't who they think he is?" "You tell them the truth," I said quietly, "because lies only grow. They eat everything." She nodded, wiping her tears. "I have nothing," she said. "The house, the cars, they're all in his name. I quit my job because he said he'd take care of me. What do I do now?" I hesitated. Then I said something that surprised even me. "Give me your information. My lawyer will help you. You and the children will be protected." Her eyes widened. "Why would you help me?" I looked at her and smiled faintly. "Because you and I have one thing in common. We both love the same liar." When she left, I closed the door gently and leaned against it. The quiet returned, and for the first time in months, I felt peace. That same afternoon, federal agents arrived at Elijah's company, his home, and the Blue House. They confiscated computers, files, hard drives, everything. His empire of deceit was crumbling piece by piece. Jamal handled the legal side. Amar handled the public image. And I handled the silence. The IRS discovered what Sterling had warned me about: offshore accounts, fake companies, hidden assets. Elijah had been hiding millions. Money that came from my inheritance. Money from our joint accounts. But he couldn't hide anymore. Not from me. Not from the law. A week later, Jamal came to me with a document and a small smile. "We recovered $3.7 million from the Cayman account. The rest will take time, but Mom, you're free." Free. The word sounded strange, heavy, and beautiful. That evening, Patricia came to visit. She looked older. "Simone," she said softly, "Mom always knew something was wrong with Elijah. Before she died, she told me, take care of Simone when the truth comes out." Her words broke something inside me. Tears I thought were gone returned quietly, rolling down my cheeks. "She always loved you more than him," Patricia added. I nodded slowly. Maybe she saw the real me before I did. 3 weeks later, the court summoned me to testify before a grand jury. The room was cold, the lights bright. Every eye was on me. I took a deep breath and began. I told them everything. Every lie, every discovery, every scar. For 4 long hours I spoke. The prosecutor, a young man named Aaron Mitchell, listened carefully. "Mrs. Vance," he asked gently, "at any point during these 12 years, did you suspect her husband's betrayal?" "There were signs," I admitted. "Small ones. Late nights, changed habits. But he was a master manipulator. He made me feel guilty for doubting him." "And what made you finally confront the truth?" I looked down at my trembling hands and said softly, because I heard another woman's laughter in the background of his call. That's all it took. One laugh. And 40 years of trust vanished. The courtroom fell silent. Even the judge's pen stopped moving. By the end of my testimony, the jurors' faces showed what I already knew. They believed me. Elijah was formally indicted for bigamy, fraud, and tax evasion. He faced 20 years in prison. When I left the courthouse, cameras flashed. Journalists shouted questions. But I didn't answer any of them. I just smiled faintly and walked away. That night, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but I knew the voice immediately. It was Elijah. His tone was broken, desperate, nothing like the confident man I once loved. Simone, please, why didn't you talk to me first? Why did you do this publicly? Explain what, Elijah? I asked quietly. How you accidentally married another woman. How you accidentally had 2 more children. It wasn't like that, he said. Candace got pregnant. I couldn't abandon her. But you abandoned me, I replied calmly. Every day. For 12 years. He was silent for a long moment. Then his voice cracked. I loved you, Simone. I always loved you. I closed my eyes. No, I said softly. You loved control. You loved convenience. You didn't love me. You loved the version of me that made your life easier. He started crying. The children, he said. What about them? What happens now? They'll be fine, I said. Candace and I have spoken. They'll be protected. You don't have to worry about them. Worry about yourself. Simone, please. I just want, I interrupted him. You don't get to want anymore. And then I hung up. That was the last time I ever heard his voice. Months passed. The scandal faded from the headlines, replaced by newer stories. But my story wasn't over. 2 years later, I was standing in my new apartment making coffee when I received a notification. Elijah Vance released early for good behavior. I stared at the screen and felt nothing. Not anger, not fear, just emptiness. He was gone from my life. For good. And I, finally, was free. I turned to look around my apartment. It was bright, full of sunlight. The walls were covered with paintings, my paintings. After decades of silence, I had picked up my brushes again. I painted everything I've lived through, the lies, the pain, the awakening. Each canvas was a chapter, each color a memory. My first exhibition opened last month. I called it Portraits of an Invented Life. The critics loved it. But for me, the real victory was personal. Every stroke of the brush had healed a wound inside me. At the gallery, I met a man, a retired literature professor, widower, kind eyes, warm smile. He said, "Your work moves me. There's so much pain in your art, but so much hope too." We had coffee, then dinner. There were no promises, no expectations. Just 2 souls who had both learned that life can begin again even after betrayal. Later, Jamal called. "Mom, Dad's trying to contact me," he said. I sighed. Does he want to see us? He says he wants to make things right. And what did you say? I told him his family was us for 40 years. He chose another. Now he has to live with that choice. My son had learned well. My daughter, Amara, simply blocked his number. Patricia visited me sometimes. She said Elijah now lived alone in a small apartment, working as a low-level accountant. Candace had left him. She refused to let him see the children. He had nothing left. No company, no family, no future. And strangely, I didn't feel revenge. I felt peace. Because this story was never really about Elijah. It was about me. About Simone, the woman who found her truth after 40 years of lies. One day, while cleaning, I found an old diary from my 20s. The pages were yellowed, but the dreams were still fresh. That young girl had wanted to study art in Paris. She had believed in passion, in color, in freedom. And now, at 64, I was finally giving her what she always wanted. Next month, I'm flying to Paris. Alone, with my paints and my courage. I'll rent a small studio near the Seine. I'll paint until my hands ache. I'll drink cheap wine and laugh with strangers who know nothing about my past. Because that's the beauty of starting over. You get to choose who you become. Before I packed, I opened a drawer and found our old wedding photo. Elijah and me, young and glowing. I didn't tear it. I didn't burn it. I placed it gently in a box labeled fiction. Because that's what it was. A beautiful, tragic fiction. I looked in the mirror one last time before leaving. The woman staring back wasn't broken anymore. She was whole. She was alive. And she smiled. "Hello, Simone," I whispered. "It's good to finally meet you." But little did I know, my story still had one last secret waiting to be uncovered, a secret my mother had left behind years ago. It happened one quiet morning, a few weeks before my trip to Paris. The air was cool, sunlight pouring through my apartment window. I was packing my brushes, organizing my travel papers, and sorting through old boxes that had followed me from house to house, from life to life. At the bottom of one box, beneath old receipts and photos, I found a sealed envelope. My name was written on it, Simone, in my mother's handwriting. I froze. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. She had been gone for 15 years. I remembered her hands, soft and gentle, always smelling of lavender. I remembered the way she used to tuck little notes into my lunch bag when I was a girl. But this was different. This was heavier. Inside the envelope, there was a smaller note from Agent Sterling, the investigator who had helped me uncover Elijah's lies. He had written, "Mrs. Vance, I found this among your husband's hidden belongings. I didn't open it. It's addressed to you. I believe your mother meant for you to have it. Open it when you are ready." My hands shook as I broke the seal. The paper was slightly yellowed. Her handwriting flowed in soft loops exactly as I remembered it. "My dearest Simone, if you are reading this, it means you have finally set yourself free. I always knew the truth about Elijah. I followed him once. I saw the other woman. But you were so fragile then. After you lost that pregnancy, you were living day by day with pain I could not undo. So I stayed quiet. I thought silence was love, but I was wrong. I should have told you. I am sorry. As my last gift to you, I've left something only you can find. There is an account Elijah does not know about. The key to it is hidden where we used to bury our treasures when you were a little girl, under the old oak tree behind the garden wall. Use it to live freely, to live truly this time. With love, your mother. I pressed the letter to my chest and cried like I hadn't cried in years. She had known. She had known all along. And even after her death, she was still protecting me. I drove to my childhood home the next morning. It had been sold to another family years ago, but when I explained who I was, the new owners, a kind elderly couple, let me search the garden. Behind a stone wall, under the towering oak tree, the earth was damp. I dug with my bare hands until my fingers touched metal. A small, rusted tin box. Inside was a folded document, perfectly sealed in a plastic pouch. There was a Swiss bank account opened in my name 20 years earlier, and the balance was enough to live 100 lives. I sat there under that oak tree, dirt on my hands, tears on my face, and I whispered, "Thank you, Mom. You gave me freedom even after you were gone." I didn't need the money. Not really. But it meant something far deeper. It meant she believed in me. She knew that one day I'd need to stand alone. I used part of that account to do something she would have been proud of. I opened a small foundation for women, those who had been silenced, controlled, or broken by deceit. I called it the Simone Hope Fund. We helped women find lawyers, therapy, education, whatever they needed to start again. When the first group of women came to meet me, I saw myself in each of them. Different faces, different stories, but the same eyes, the same silent hurt. One woman said quietly, "I stayed because I thought love meant patience." I nodded. That's what I thought too. But love without respect isn't love. It's captivity. Those words weren't planned. They came straight from my heart. And at that moment, I realized something powerful. My pain had become my purpose. Weeks later, I finally flew to Paris. The city was everything I had dreamed of. Soft lights over the Seine, small cafes on every corner, the smell of croissants and rain. I rented a tiny studio in Montmartre, old wooden floors, white curtains, sunlight pouring in through tall windows. I painted from dawn till dusk. Landscapes, faces, memories, and every color I used was a piece of my soul returning home. Some nights, I'd walk along the river and watch couples holding hands. I wasn't jealous. I was content. Because I had found something better than love, I had found peace. A month later, I received a letter from home. It was from my daughter, Amara. Mom, the foundation's growing. The press is writing about it. People are calling you the woman who turned betrayal into strength. I'm proud of you. Jamal says hi. He just won a big case. We love you. I smiled through tears. That was the kind of love that lasts. Real love. But as peaceful as my new life felt, part of me still carried a quiet sadness, a tiny ache for the years I had lost. Sometimes I'd wake up at dawn, hearing echoes of Elijah's voice in my dreams saying, I love you, Simone. But I'd whisper back, you loved a lie. And then I'd pick up my brush again. One evening, I was at my art exhibit in Paris when a man approached me. He was tall, maybe in his late 60s, with kind eyes and gray hair. He smiled gently. Your art, it's filled with pain, but there's also light in it. I smiled. Because pain can make you stronger if you let it. His name was Michael, a retired literature professor who had lost his wife years ago. We talked about books, art, and the strange beauty of life after heartbreak. He said softly, do you ever feel like we get a second chance when we least expect it? I nodded. Yes, I think we do. We began having coffee every few days. He never asked about my past, and I never asked about his. We simply existed together, two souls who had seen too much and still believed in beauty. One afternoon, he brought me a small gift, a notebook with a red leather cover. For your stories, he said. Because someday someone will need to hear them. I opened it that night and began to write everything, the lies, the pain, the truth, and the rebirth. Every word felt like breathing again. Weeks passed. My exhibition ended, but my life felt newly alive. Every morning, I painted or wrote. Every evening, I walked along the Seine. And sometimes, when the sunset painted the sky in gold and pink, I'd imagine my mother watching me and smiling. Back in Atlanta, the news about Elijah's sentencing came out. He had been convicted of bigamy, fraud, and document forgery. He was given 10 years, but only served 4. He was released quietly, with no fanfare, no family waiting for him. He lived alone now, working at a small accounting firm that didn't check his past. Candace never took him back. She was rebuilding her own life, raising her children with dignity. We had stayed in touch. She once told me, you saved me, Simone. You saved my children. I told her the truth. You saved yourself. I just showed you where the door was. Elijah never tried to contact me again. Maybe he was ashamed. Maybe he knew I had nothing left to say. And that was fine. Because forgiveness doesn't mean you let someone back in. Sometimes it just means you finally let them go. My life moved forward quietly, beautifully. Every day I painted. Every day I lived. And every day I thanked the version of myself who refused to be silent anymore. One rainy afternoon, I was walking near the Louvre with Michael. He looked at me and said, do you ever miss the old life? I thought about it and smiled. No, because the old life wasn't real. It was a story written by someone else. Now I'm writing my own. He laughed softly. Then keep writing it. It's your masterpiece. We kept walking, side by side, umbrellas touching. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of it. When I returned home to my studio that evening, I found another letter waiting on my desk. It was from the lawyer handling my foundation. He wrote, Mrs. Vance, we've just received an anonymous donation of $500,000 to your fund. The donor refused to give a name, but left a note that simply said, for those who still believe in redemption. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't need to ask who it was from. I knew. Elijah. For the first time in many years, I didn't feel anger toward him. I felt closure. Maybe he finally understood what he had destroyed. Maybe this was his way of saying sorry. And that was enough. That night, I took out my mother's letter one more time. I read her words again under the soft glow of the lamp. Live truly this time. I whispered, I am, Mom. I promise I am. I went to the balcony and looked at the Paris skyline. The Eiffel Tower shimmered in the distance, glowing like hope. And I thought about every woman who had been silenced, every voice that had been buried under someone else's lies. I hoped they would all find their freedom too. As I stood there, the city lights reflecting in my eyes, I realized something simple yet powerful. You can lose everything and still win your life back. You can be broken and still be beautiful. And sometimes, the most painful ending is just the beginning of your truth. I smiled. Because for the first time in over 40 years, I wasn't living someone else's story. I was living mine. But my journey wasn't completely over yet. Because one day, a call came that would stir my peace again, a call that would remind me that even after freedom, the past sometimes knocks one last time. It was early spring. Paris was waking up after a long winter. Cherry blossoms were blooming, and my studio window was open to the smell of rain and paint. I had been working on a new canvas, something brighter this time, soft blues, gold, and white. For once, I was painting joy. The phone rang. The number was from the United States. I hesitated before answering. "Hello?" I said. "Mrs. Vance?" a soft female voice asked. "My name is Laura Mitchell. I'm a nurse at St. Anne's Hospice in Atlanta. I'm calling about a patient, Mr. Elijah Vance." My heart paused. It had been 5 years since I had last heard that name spoken aloud in connection to me. My throat went dry. "What about him?" "He's very ill, ma'am," the nurse said gently. "Advanced lung cancer. He asked for you." For a few seconds, I couldn't speak. My hands started to tremble. After everything he had done, after all the lies, all the pain, he was asking for me. "Why?" I finally whispered. "He said he needs to see you before he goes. He said he wants to apologize." I closed my eyes, my hand pressed against my chest. The past I thought I'd buried suddenly felt alive again, like a ghost whispering through my bones. I thanked the nurse and hung up. Then I sat in silence for a long time. The question kept echoing, should I go? Part of me said no. He didn't deserve it. He deserved to fade away alone, surrounded by the lies he created. But another part of me, the part that had learned forgiveness isn't weakness, whispered softly, "Go." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing my mother's voice from the letter. Live truly this time. The next morning, I packed my bag. I booked a flight to Atlanta. When I landed, the air smelled like memories, old and heavy. Jamal met me at the airport. "Mom," he said softly, "you don't have to do this." "I know," I said, "but I want to." We drove in silence to the hospice. The nurse met us at the door. She smiled kindly. "He's awake today. He's been waiting for you." The hallway smelled of medicine and fading flowers. I walked slowly toward his room. Every step felt like a decade. When I entered, I barely recognized him. The strong, confident man I once loved was gone. Elijah was thin, pale, his hair gray and soft against the pillow. Tubes ran along his arms, and his breathing was shallow. When his eyes opened and saw me, tears filled them instantly. "Simone," he whispered. "You came." I stood at the foot of his bed, unsure what to say. After all these years, after all those sleepless nights and broken truths, there were no rehearsed words left. He reached out a trembling hand. "You look beautiful." I didn't move. He smiled weakly. "Still stubborn, I see." "I had to be," I said quietly. "You made me that way." He nodded, his eyes wet. "I deserve that. I deserve that. I deserve all of it." We sat in silence for a while, the only sound the soft hum of machines. Finally, he spoke again. "I've had a lot of time to think. I've written letters, one for each of you. For Jamal, for Omara, for Candace, and for you." He gestured toward the bedside table. There were 4 envelopes stacked neatly. "I've lost everything," he said slowly. "But losing you was the worst." I shook my head. "You didn't lose me, Elijah. You gave me away, piece by piece, every time you lied." His lips trembled. "You're right. he whispered. I built my life on lies, and in the end, I buried myself in them. But I need you to know one thing. I did love you, Simone. I loved you in my own broken way. I looked at him for a long time. For the first time, I didn't see the man who betrayed me. I saw a man who was already half gone, a man who had built his own prison and lived long enough to feel every bar of it. I forgive you, I said quietly. He gasped, almost sobbing. Why? After everything? Because forgiveness isn't for you, I said. It's for me. I'm not carrying you anymore, Elijah. Not in hate and not in memory. You're free now, and so am I. He closed his eyes, tears sliding down his cheeks. Thank you, he whispered. Then he smiled faintly. You always were stronger than me. I took one of his letters, the one with my name on it, and nodded. Goodbye, Elijah. When I walked out of the room, Jamal was waiting in the hall. I didn't cry. Not this time. I had already done my mourning years ago. The next morning, the nurse called. He passed away peacefully during the night. I thanked her and hung up. Then I went to the park and sat on a bench beneath a large oak tree. The sky was clear, the sun soft. I closed my eyes and whispered a small prayer, not for the man he had been, but for the man he could have been. That evening, I opened his letter. Simone, if you're reading this, I am already gone. There are no excuses that can erase what I did. I ruined the best thing that ever happened to me. You gave me love, loyalty, and faith, and I returned it with deception. I don't ask for forgiveness, but I hope one day you'll find peace. The donation I made to your foundation was the only good thing I've done in years. It was meant for you, to give hope where I once took it away. Live the rest of your life fully, Simone. Every breath of freedom. You deserve every sunrise. Elijah, I folded the letter gently and put it away. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel pain. Just quiet. A calm so deep it felt like grace. A week later, I attended his small memorial service. There were no cameras, no reporters, just a handful of people, Patricia, Candace, and the children. Candace looked at me across the room. Her eyes were kind. We didn't speak, but we nodded at each other, an unspoken truce between two women who had survived the same storm. Little Jelen was there, taller now, holding his sister's hand. He looked at me with a mix of curiosity and confusion. I smiled softly, not as his father's wife, but as another soul who had learned the cost of lies. When the ceremony ended, Patricia came to me. He kept your picture by his bed, she said quietly. Right till the end. I smiled sadly. Maybe he finally saw the truth. After the funeral, I went to my mother's grave. I placed a white lily on the stone. Mom, I whispered, it's done. It's finally over. A soft breeze brushed my face, and I swear I could almost feel her hand again. Maybe that was her way of saying, I told you you'd make it. When I returned to Paris, something inside me felt lighter. I unpacked my brushes, turned on soft music, and began painting again. But this time, the colors were brighter. Sunsets, oceans, spring flowers. No shadows. No sadness. Months passed quietly. Michael and I grew closer. We didn't talk about the past. We simply lived in the present. We took tango classes on weekends. We visited small villages along the coast. Sometimes he'd read to me from his favorite poetry book while I painted. For the first time in my life, love didn't hurt. It healed. One evening, as the sun dipped below the rooftops, Michael asked me, do you ever think about going back to America? I smiled. No, my story there ended. My life is here now. He nodded, then took my hand. Then here's to new beginnings, he said softly. We clinked our wine glasses together. Later that night, I stood on my balcony, looking at the glittering city below. I thought of everything, the lies, the heartbreak, the rediscovery. And I realized that pain doesn't destroy you. It reveals you. I wasn't just Simone, the betrayed wife. I was Simone, the artist. Simone, the survivor. Simone, The woman who learned how to love herself. As the wind brushed my hair, I whispered, "Thank you, life, for giving me a second chance." The next morning, I finished my final painting of the series. It was called The Oak Tree. In the center stood a woman beneath a tree, her hands open to the sky, her eyes filled with light. Behind her, the roots glowed golden, representing every painful memory that had once held her down but now kept her strong. When the painting was displayed at the gallery, people stopped and stared for minutes. They said it felt alive, full of forgiveness and peace. One woman asked me, "What does it mean?" I smiled and said, "It means I survived." Years passed gently after that. My foundation flourished, helping hundreds of women rebuild their lives. Jamal and Amara both found happiness. Jamal married a kind woman who adored him, and Amara finally opened her own public relations firm. We stayed close, calling each other often. They always ended every call with, "We love you, Mom." And I always answered, "I love you more." Michael and I traveled together, visited Italy, Greece, and Morocco, the places Elijah and I had once dreamed of visiting but never did. Every journey felt like reclaiming a piece of my stolen life. Sometimes people at art shows would recognize me. They'd whisper, "That's Simone Vance, the woman who turned her husband's scandal into strength." And I'd just smile. Because yes, that was me. But it was only part of who I was now. On my 68th birthday, I sat with Michael at a small cafe near the scene. He handed me a tiny velvet box. Inside was a simple gold ring. "Not for possession," he said, "for companionship." I smiled through tears. "Yes," I whispered, "I'd like that very much. No promises of forever. Just today." And that was enough. That night, as we danced to the soft sound of street musicians, I realized something I wanted every woman watching to know. The end of one story doesn't mean the end of your life. Sometimes it's just the chapter where you finally begin to write in your own voice. And that's what I had done. I had rewritten my life, word by word, brushstroke by brushstroke, until it belonged to me again. Now, as I sit by the window, watching the Paris rain fall gently against the glass, I think about the girl I once was, the girl who gave up her dreams for love. I want to tell her, "You didn't fail. You just took the long road home." And I made it home. Because home isn't a place. It's peace. It's knowing who you are when everything else falls away. I close my eyes, smile, and whisper one last time, "Hello, Simone. It's good to finally know you." If this story touched your heart, take a moment before scrolling. Tell me in the comments what part of Simone's journey spoke to you most. Was it the betrayal, the strength, or the peace at the end? Every comment helps this story reach more people who might need it today. And if you felt even a little hope through Simone's words, please tap like, hit subscribe, and turn on the bell icon so you don't miss the next life story. Because here, every story reminds us that even the darkest chapters can lead to light. Thank you for watching. With love and respect from me to you.